What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Coach Sean's Kitchen. Thank you so much for bearing with me these past few weeks. Life has been pretty crazy, but I am so excited to be back with this amazing grilled flank steak recipe. Flank steak has to be one of my favorite cuts of meat to do outside on the grill during summer. Now, this video can be taken one of two ways. It can either be a nice tutorial for how to grill flank steak, which is notoriously tough for getting right out on the grill, or you can look at this video as an amazing marinade recipe, because this marinade has to be one of my favorites for anything I'm putting out on the grill. So let's get down to it, doing it homemade and healthy. This is Coach Sean's Kitchen. Before we get started, thank you so much for tuning into this video. I'm still blown away by the amount of people that watch them and that tune into my blog. So if you do enjoy watching videos like how to grill a flank steak, please subscribe and consider sharing this video to a friend. It's the absolute best thing you can do to help me continue to make videos like this. As I mentioned in the intro, this video is a great tutorial for how to grill flank steak. But I'm also gonna show you one of my favorite grilling marinades, and this can be applied to so many different cuts of meat that you wanna do outside during summer. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna juice 2 oranges and a crap ton of limes. And yes, I want you to juice this fresh. If you've ever tasted somebody else's food and wonder why it's so much better than yours, they're probably using fresher ingredients. Now, another thing to note is how much acidic liquid I have here, meaning it's really gonna tenderize whatever cut of meat you put into this marinade. So be very mindful of how long you're marinating your meat for, else you could end up with something a little bit too mushy. Now that everything is juiced, we can begin assembling the rest of our marinade, which is basically the juice, oil, and some spices, which today I'm gonna be using oregano and cumin, 2 spices that I absolutely love on the grill. But you could use 2 of your favorite as well, like thyme or chili powder. Next, we're gonna add a few more flavor enhancers, like some fresh onion and some fresh garlic. Could you use garlic and onion powder? Yeah. Would it be as good? No. Also, I love putting fresh onion in my marinades, because then I get to saute some marinated onions that go great on whatever you were grilling. So now that our marinade is done, let's turn our attention to the meat. Here, I've got 2 beautiful flank steaks that I picked up from Costco. And the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run over it with my meat tenderizer. And this is gonna do 2 things. First, it's gonna help break down some of that connective tissue so that I have a very tender cut of meat. The second, I'm creating a bunch of little holes in my meat that my marinade can seep into. This is really gonna help to enhance the flavor. This step isn't necessary, but I like to do it. Once done, I'm gonna put my steaks into a marinating vessel that is clearly too small for them, and then toss it with all of that marinade and onions. And I'm gonna put it in the fridge for about 3 hours, flipping the steaks over once every 30 minutes. So while our steak is marinating, I'm gonna turn my attention to some peppers. And my favorite way to cook peppers is to roast them on my stove. And the goal here is simple. I wanna char the bejesus out of them. Think marshmallow that caught on fire and you no longer wanna eat. That is exactly what we're going for when we char peppers like this. Once the peppers are done, I'm gonna put them in a bowl with a lid so that they can steam and continue to cook. After about 15 minutes, I'm gonna scrape off all of that charred exterior, and I'm gonna begin julienning these peppers up. And these are fantastic to go on top of the steak or just to have lying around in your kitchen. Now that our peppers are done, we're gonna turn our attention back to the flank steak. So I'm gonna pull it out of the fridge, and the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drain off those onions, because I definitely wanna saute them. Also, I'm gonna save the marinade, because I love reducing my marinades over the stove to create a great sauce to toss whatever it is I just cooked. After that, we'll pat our flank steaks dry, we'll add a little bit more salt, and then we're gonna head out to our grill. Today, I'm using my gas grill and I have this thing cranked up as high as it can go because I want to sear these steaks and I want to cook them fast. So once the grill is ripping hot, I'm gonna go ahead and place my flank steaks on them and I'm gonna press them down into the grate because I want a lot of contact and that's gonna give me those great grill marks that I know we want. After that, I'm gonna shut my grill and I'm not gonna touch it for a good 4 to 5 minutes. Then I'm gonna flip my flank steaks over and I'm gonna press them into the grate and I'm gonna cook the other side for probably about a minute longer. After this point, it's time to start checking our temperature because we always cook by a thermometer, not by time. So I'm shooting for about 125 degrees Fahrenheit in the thickest part of the meat. My goal is that thickest middle part is still medium rare and the ends only go up to medium. So once I temp the steaks, I have a good idea how much longer they'll need to cook. So I'll continually flip them from side A to side B to ensure they cook evenly, and I'll slowly bring it up until that middle part temps at that 125 degrees. Then I'll pull the steaks, I'll wrap them and bring them inside to rest. Now that our flank steak is done, you can see why this is one of my favorite summertime grilling cuts of meat. See that the exterior is so charred, we have those beautiful grill marks, and as we begin to slice through it, you can see just how perfectly this flank steak was cooked. Something to pay attention to is double check that you're cutting against the grain. If you've ever had really chewy flank steak, it's probably because it was cut incorrectly. As I kept slicing my flank steak, I found that the middle was a little rarer than I wanted it. And that's okay, these kind of things happen to all of us. So whenever I have this kind of scenario happen to me, all I do is I take those pieces and I put them in a separate container, and this is the meat that I'm going to reheat. Think sauteing on the stove or throwing in the microwave, opposed to topping a salad or eating out of the fridge at midnight. Finally, we're gonna plate up this flank steak. So I'm gonna put down a nice bed of those caramelized onions and peppers, and then I'm gonna lay that flank steak right over the top. I'm gonna ladle on some of that marinade that I reduced to a sauce, and then finally, I'm gonna finish with some fresh cilantro. Overall, this dish came out so good. But one of the benefits of a tough cut of meat like flank steak is it gets better the next day. As those muscle fibers and collagen begins to relax in the fridge when it cools, the meat becomes more tender and I'll say even more flavorful. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of Coach Sean's Kitchen. And if you did, please hit that like button and let me know in the comments how I did. For the full recipe, go ahead and check out my blog at CoachSean'sKitchen.com. And as always guys, remember, you can make anything homemade and healthy.